Hello everyone, my name is Robert Scott and I am the Chief Technology Officer of Analytix DS Conversion Services and Conversion Utilities. Today we're going to actually be going over one of our core modules, a new module offering in our 5.0 release, which is called the Code Automation Template Framework. Today we're going to actually go through a particular template that provides a series of automation. Have you ever wanted to have the ability to be able to just pick certain tables from your sources and have it automatically generate the DDL for the create table or the create staging tables that you could give off to your DBAs? Along with that, for those of you who are familiar with Analytix Mapping Manager, being able to import those tables and so forth into our metadata so you can actually see them in our system catalog. At the same time, automatically generate the mappings within our mapping grid, creating a full source to target mapping for every stage table that we wanted to create, and cap everything off with the automatic creation or being able to create the actual ETL based on the ETL tool of your choice. Well, this is what we're actually going to go through today. We're actually going to go through the steps that it will take to automatically generate everything that I talked about in the last few seconds. So without further ado, we're actually going to start the process off and actually show you how to get into our Analytix Mapping Manager framework and go through briefly how we create that particular template. The first thing we want to do is log into the system. So I'm signing into the system as administrator, which will actually get us into the AMM Mapping Manager. For those of you that know a little bit about our Mapping Manager workspace, basically what I'm showing you right here is basically the how you can take a look at the particular mappings and so forth that we have. First thing we're going to go through is we're going to go through to the metadata repository, and we'll see that we're going through the AdventureWorks tables here. Here are all the tables that are in the AdventureWorks database in that database schema. You probably know those pretty well. For those that have worked with SSIS and Microsoft SQL Server, the AdventureWorks database is one of the sample databases that comes with the tool. I'm actually going through each one of the tables and so forth here so you can see each of the tables and the columns and so forth that are associated with that. Remember what I said was that we want to be able to generate a staging table for every table that we pick from the source. Well, in this case, we're going to pick all of the tables from the AdventureWorks source and create a _STG or a stage table that goes along with every table. We're actually going to add something additional to these tables as well, so that we're going to add a couple of audit columns for each of these tables. So not only are we going to rename the table or have a staging table, but we're going to have some audit columns like the record source, stage sequence, and so forth that we'll add in as well. So in order to do that, we just went through all the columns and the tables and some of the columns and so forth that we have here. We're going to actually go and run a template, and that brings up our CAT template library. I actually created here a tab for our CAT samples, and once we get to those CAT samples, we have a template that I create called the full stage create template. We're actually going to run that template. And when we run that template, first thing that's going to come up, or one of the things that is going to come up, I'm just going to pick a dummy mapping, or one of the mappings and so forth here. But you're going to see that the list of AdventureWorks tables and so forth shows up. They're not checked off yet because we can actually check off the tables that we want to create the staging. I'm going to choose all of the tables from the AdventureWorks schema. So you can see that they're all checked off here. I could have checked off just a couple columns, just a few tables, or what have you. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to choose all of them. I'm running it, and you see right away that there's 0 mappings that are there after I did the run. However, notice that in the staging, I don't have any tables and so forth there as well until I refresh. So you can see that it's running right now, and it's going through the process of creating an export file. Now that export file I'll go into in a little bit of time, but before actually getting into that, that was a zip file. But before actually getting into that, I'm actually going to refresh and show you what has been generated in our metadata. When I click that refresh, notice that it went from 0 to 72. We actually created 72 mappings that quickly from our CAT template. And notice that each of the templates, each of the tables, mappings that are here represent each one of the tables that we picked from the source. So what I'm going to show you here are that these were the source names, database log. We're actually going through here and see the list of the tables. And if you see over on the left-hand side, there goes another one, product stage. Look at all the staging tables and so forth that we've generated. Person contact stage. Those weren't there before. So we have actually gone through and refreshed and created not only the stage tables for every table, but also the mappings for every table and brought them into the metadata of Mapping Manager itself. I'm going into one of the mappings itself, so you can see that we actually created the full source to target grid for the staging template. I'm going to go back, and if we go over to the right, we will see that not only did we pull the source columns for that particular table, but I've also given some business rules for trimming, trimming, and so forth, those things. Just to show you that we have control over the business rules. And you can see that they match back to the source AdventureWorks columns, and they match to the columns that are in the grid. So this would have been something that you would have typically have done manually before, which we've automatically created for you with that CAT template. Now if I scroll over here to the left, you will see that we've actually populated the stage environment and created a stage table with the _stage_stg. I want to open up that zip file that I created earlier. If you go in and take a look at that, this is the actual DDL that was created for SQL Server that would actually create the stage tables. You see in this particular one, I created the schemas. I've also created the types because there were some user-defined data types, and every table _stg, and notice the couple additional columns that are in there as well. The SQN, the LDTS, and the record source. I actually just ran this script. Forgive some of the errors here because we already had some of the schemas in there before. But you notice that there were no tables in there before under the HP. Now if I refresh that, I should see all 72 tables actually generated in SQL Server. The script can automatically be run by your DBA or can be run manually if you have, run by yourself if you have the permissions. So not only now that we've actually, with our script, our CAT template, code automation template, we've created the mappings, all 72 tables. We've created the staging, all 72 staging tables. We've created the DDL. And now I'm going through the process of actually showing you how we can actually generate the ETL mapping. We're going to pick Informatica in this case. We're going to choose our standard Informatica template because it's a simple source to stage. When I run that, it's going through right now and creating, and we choose, we can go in here and we choose the 72 mappings that we want to generate the Informatica mapping for. When I actually run that, it's actually going to create another zip file with the XML that can be used to import into Informatica. So as you can see, it just created the zip file again. I'm going to open up that zip file. And I'm going to go into the folder. And you would notice that when I go into the folder, which is folder number 4 here, there are 72 XML files that have been generated. We have another CAT that will actually bring all these 72 files together as one file that you can use to import into Informatica as well. But in this one, we created actually 72 distinct XML files. Now, can you just imagine how long that would have taken if you're doing all of this by hand? You know, what we're doing in minutes would have taken days, if not weeks, if not months, in order to do it, depending on the skill set of the developer and your BA and so forth that are working on it. But we kind of encapsulated this all into one. Look at each XML file, and each XML file maps to a mapping that we generated in Mapping Manager. I'm going to now go over to my Informatica designer. And I'm actually going to import a couple of these mappings just to show you what was generated for that simple source to target. So I'm going in here and I'm going to import objects. I'm going to go to that same folder that we were at before. Remember, it was the 4 folder. So I'm going to go down, find that export ETL library 4. And there are those 72 mappings. I'm actually going to open up one of these. Let's open up the person contact that we looked at earlier. We're going to actually go through the process of importing that in. As you can see, it created the mapping, the stage, and the source and target. We're going to go through the import. We're importing it into the Informatica folder. Go through and do the import. If we click on the import there, you would notice that there are no mappings and so forth in the Informatica mappings on the left-hand side of our screen here. So I'm going to just click the import, and there I go. 100%, I've created it, and there's the M-person contact. Very simple mapping, but look what we did. We created a source to target with an expression transformation in the middle. Well, now why the expression transformation? You see the source and the target. Remember all those R trims that we had? Well, if you look at the ports, you will see that we've generated the business rules, the expressions, for those 3 additional columns and all those R trims and so forth that we had actually put into the mapping business rule. Those all came through. So I'm going to go back here and I'm just going to show you that, just so for those that didn't see that earlier, go back into the mapping in-person contact, go and take a look directly at the mapping itself. Remember the person contact stage table. Here goes the R trim. look at the other business rules, the sys-state, the eventual works, and so forth, that remember, we automatically populated, and how those are actually showing up in the expression itself. Every one of those mappings that we created, those XML files, can be imported the same way. Import object, go find your object, your mapping, and go through the process of importing that. I'm just going to pick some random ones here. I'm going to pick in the employee. I'll bring that one in. I'm actually going to import in, and as you can see, it imported. There goes our source, which is the employee table, to a target, which is the employee table. And there goes those R trims and so forth once again. And as I mentioned before, we're actually in this one. As I mentioned before, this actually worked by just running that CAT template. Let me import another one here. Let's go down. Let's see what we can find here. We're going to find the employee department history. I'm going to import that one in as well. And all said and done. Now I have them all there. I'm just going to save. Well, I'm going to go through one more. Let's see. What else do we have? We have product. Let's pick a bigger one. Transaction history. I'm going to import that one as well. And as you can see here, we've imported 4 of them very, very quickly. And as I mentioned before, we can actually generate the template to create them all in one and import that into Informatica as well. Or create a PM rep command that loops through and imports them in if we wanted to. We have total control over, with our CATfx templates, to be able to automate this process in many different ways. Once again, you see we brought that information in. We have that one, just one R trim. That's because all the other columns were not car columns, string columns. They were actually date, times, and so forth. So we knew not to go through the process of doing that R trim. That's very important to know. The logic was built into the CAT to be able to do that. I just saved it out and it's all validated. And that's it. There you go, an automation of your CAT. I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to get back to Blake McCoach or anyone from the Analytics DS team. We're going to be creating many more of these training sessions and so forth for you. But I hope that you have seen what we can actually do with the CATfx automation framework and how we can be a full solution for not only your mapping needs, but for any needs as it relates to your information management projects. Thank you and take care.